Hey, you want to speak English confidently, fluently, like a native English speaker, right? Well, there are 5 tips that I have for you. 5 tips that you must understand in order to speak English fluently. And I'm going to give you those tips today. Are you ready? Well then, I'm teacher Tiffany. Let's jump right in. All right, tip number 1. Tip number 1 is stop saying sorry. Apologizing actually affects your English fluency. That may surprise you. You may think, hey, I don't want the person to look at me funny, or I don't want the person to judge me, so I'm going to say, sorry, I'm not really good at English. But this affects you more than you realize. You see, let me explain this a little bit clearer. The thing is, when you say, sorry, I'm bad at English, you lose confidence in your ability to speak English fluently. When you lose confidence in yourself, you will not move forward. I'm going to say that again. When you lose confidence in yourself, not other people, when you lose confidence in yourself, your English will not improve. So you must stop saying, sorry, I'm bad at English. Or saying, sorry, my English pronunciation is not good. You see, when you say this, you're actually telling the person listening to you that you are not confident in yourself. You all know how many times I emphasize confidence, and confidence is important when you want to speak English fluently. So when you start a conversation with, oops, sorry, my pronunciation is not good, you're telling the person, I'm not confident in myself. I want to emphasize another point when it comes to pronunciation. Yesterday, true story, I actually went to the store. I live in America. I'm a native English speaker. I went to Walmart to pick something up, and the lady that helped me, she had a very strong accent. Did it affect me? No. She and I had a long conversation. We actually found out we live in the same apartment complex, but as I was speaking with her, I thought about you. She didn't care about her pronunciation because she was speaking English fluently, and I understood, and there was no problem. So I don't want you to feel so insecure about your pronunciation. Yes, you can improve when there are certain sounds that may be difficult for people to understand when you're speaking, but don't apologize for your pronunciation. Just like me, when I was speaking to the worker at Walmart, I continued with the conversation and it didn't bother me at all. Be confident in yourself. The other thing is, when you say sorry about my English, you are telling your brain that it is bad to make mistakes. Again, when you say sorry about my English, you're saying, brain, how dare you make a mistake? You should not make mistakes. But the truth is, when you are learning a language, mistakes are important. How can you improve if you don't make mistakes and then tweak certain things? So when you make a mistake, it's okay. That's how you learn. Think about children when they're growing up. They have to make mistakes and learn to continue growing. The same is true about your English. So the first tip is, please stop saying sorry. Now, I want to tell you the second tip, another one that's very important. I need you to remember that you should not worry about every vocabulary word. Knowing more words will not automatically make you fluent. I've had so many students during my time as an English teacher, and you all know how much I love teaching you English. But during my time as an English teacher, I've had so many students ask me this question. Teacher, what does this word mean? What does this word mean? What does this word mean? When we're watching a program. Now, this is when I was in South Korea. We'll be watching a program or doing something together, and every single word they didn't know, they would ask me. Now, as a teacher, I love helping my students. I love helping you. But over time, I realized that the students were focusing on small details instead of the bigger picture. You don't have to know every single word. Let me explain this a little more in a clearer way. Memorizing thousands of vocabulary words does not mean you will speak English fluently. Let me say that again. Memorizing thousands of English vocabulary words does not mean you will automatically speak English fluently. Now, Vocabulary is very important. Don't misunderstand. Vocabulary is very important, but you have to use it. I experienced this same challenge when I was studying Korean. There were points in time where I would memorize 50 to 100 Korean vocabulary words on a daily basis. But my Korean fluency was not improving. I had all of these words in my mind that I could not use. So again, memorizing does not equal fluency. You must understand the context. Understanding the context, the idea of what is being said or presented, is more important than understanding every single word. Think about it. At the end of every lesson, what do? Story time, right? It's coming, don't worry. But I give you a story about my life. Now, every single word I use, you may not understand, but you're so engaged, you're so interested in the story I'm telling that you understand the context, and your brain is actually able to guess certain words, to guess certain expressions or idioms that I use during story time. It is so important for you to understand that context is more important than vocabulary words. Point number 3. Focusing only on the words will cause you to stop enjoying English. If you're sitting there, again, I did the same thing. If you're sitting there when you watch an English drama or a television show or a movie and you have your notebook, which is good at times, but every time you watch a show, you push pause and write down the word. Play, pause, write down the word. If you do that every single time, remember, pay attention, sometimes that is important. But if you do it every time, you'll never understand the words in context. Your brain is amazing. English is your second, third, fourth, or fifth language, so you are already smart enough to learn this language. Trust your brain. Trust that your brain will understand words in context. So tip number 2, don't worry about every vocabulary word. Now, point number 3. Tip number 3 is, I want you to remember this. Tip number 3 is, remember that you are intelligent. I just said it a while ago. You are already fluent in one language. And for maybe your situation, you're fluent in 2, 3, 4, or even 5 or 6 languages already. You must remember that you, my friend, are already intelligent. So this is something I want to emphasize right here. English, again, is your second, third, fourth, and maybe even fifth language. Your brain is amazing. You are already able, point number 2, to express yourself confidently in your own language. Think about that. You can express your thoughts, your ideas in your own language. So as you're learning English and trying to become fluent, you don't have to be discouraged because you are already amazing. You are intelligent. And point number 3 is, you can understand what I'm saying. Think about that. I am a native English speaker. You're not. You're learning, but you are able to understand me. You are awesome. Your brain is amazing. I need you to remember that you are intelligent. Tip number 3. These things are important in order for you to finally speak English fluently. Now, tip number 4 is also important. This is something that many students struggle with. You must apply what you learn immediately. The faster you use it, the easier it will be to remember. Here's the thing. Remember earlier we were talking about the tip dealing with vocabulary, tip number 2, and I said just memorizing will not equal fluency. This touches on the same thing. You must apply what you learn immediately. So when I was learning 50 to 100 vocabulary words, Korean words in one day, it was impossible for me to immediately apply all of those words. But when I switched and I started memorizing a smaller number of words and I immediately started using them and applying them in my real life, then my Korean fluency started to go up like this. So I want you to remember these points right here. First, this helps you understand what you are learning even more. When you memorize a word, when you learn a concept, an idea, or watch one of my lessons, and you immediately apply what you learned. Maybe you teach it to your friend or family member. Maybe you make a sentence using the lesson or the word or expression. Maybe you actually go out and start talking to someone in English, applying what you learned. Your brain says, okay, all right, we have new information. Now it's time for us to stick it in there and say, hey, we learned it, now we have to use it. You must use it immediately. The other point is, it will create triggers in your brain. When you first learn something, you only have one thing to connect it to. Either the book you learned it from, the video you learned it from, maybe you look at the phone or on the internet. But when you apply what you learned, now there are multiple triggers in your brain. Your brain is amazing. There are different triggers going off all the time. If I say apple juice, something pops in your head, right? Maybe you enjoy apple juice and you remember the first time you had apple juice. Or maybe you remember 2 weeks ago when you were drinking apple juice with your daughter or son. There are certain triggers already in your brain connected to situations, experiences, and other things. You have to create triggers by applying what you learn immediately. Again, this will help you speak English fluently. Point number 3, your confidence in your English ability, English speaking ability, will increase faster. When you start using what you're learning, you'll kind of start, patting yourself on the back like, well, I guess I am pretty good at English. And that's okay. That is wonderful. Use and apply what you learn immediately. You will shock yourself. You will gain so much confidence. Your shoulders will go back. You'll walk a little bit straighter. When you speak in English, you'll speak with more confidence when you apply what you learn immediately. And this 5th tip is so important. I want you to remember this. I need you to think about your wins, not your mistakes. It's important to remember your accomplishments. Here's the thing. As an English learner, you are going to make mistakes. It's inevitable. It is going to happen. It happened with me when I was learning Korean, and even now I make mistakes when I'm speaking in Korean sometimes because I have not been in the country in a while, in Korea. However, for you, instead of focusing on, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't know that grammar rule. Oh my goodness. I forgot the word when I was speaking to my friend, or oh man, I wrote that comment on Facebook or YouTube and I think I maybe used the wrong English word. Stop. What I want you to remember is that you have some amazing wins. Think about your wins. What did you do that was amazing? Maybe you learned a new word on Instagram from my lesson or here from one of my lessons and you used it. Think about that. I used what teacher Tiffani taught me. That's a win. Focus on your wins. Here's point number 1 to help you with this one. Your confidence in your English speaking ability will increase faster. It will shock and amaze you. Focusing on your mistakes, point 2, will make you feel discouraged and nervous when you speak English. If every time you make a mistake, you focus on it over and over and over again, the next time you go to speak in English, you will feel discouraged and nervous. And finally, in order to gain more confidence in your abilities, you must remember all that you have accomplished. I'll say it again. You are amazing. You are learning another language. And tip number 5 is you have to remember. You have to think about your wins and stop focusing on your mistakes. I believe in you. I know that you are amazing, and I believe that you can speak English fluently. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope it helps you. Watch it over and over again. Share it with somebody else that wants to speak English fluently. I truly care about you, and I can't wait to see you in the next lesson. Talk to you next time. You still there? You know what time it is. Here we go. It's story time. Hey, I said it's story time. All right. Now, today's story, guys, is connected to what I was teaching you in the tips that I gave you today. We're talking about confidence, speaking English fluently, and I want to tell you about a time that I did not have confidence in myself until I remembered something. So, many of you know, and maybe you do, maybe you know as well, I love sports. When I was in high school, I was voted the most athletic female in my high school. When I got to college, I was voted the most athletic female out of all the females in my college. So, as you can tell, I've always loved sports. Very athletic. I like taking care of myself. And my favorite sport has always been basketball. I've been playing it since I was a child. And I remember when I was in college. You know, college basketball is harder than high school basketball, of course. But right before I went to college, there was a gentleman, Mr. Rayford, if he ever watches this. And Mr. Rayford actually coached me a little bit on the side. Not officially, but he would give me tips and he would help me with some of the steps I needed to master to get to the basket, you know, the hoop faster and properly, and some things with dribbling to kind of avoid my opponents. He really gave me some good basketball tips. So when I was around Mr. Rayford, I felt confident in my basketball skills. Now, fast forward, I remember the day it happened. I was a freshman in college, and we were in basketball practice. And my coach, when I was in college, he was good. He was a little bit, he yelled a lot more than I was used to, but, you know, he's a nice guy. So anyways, we're in practice, and I played the point guard. I was the number one or the number two. Number one being the point guard that brings the ball down and hands it out to the team, the players, or number two being the one that helps the point guard and also is a shooting guard. So anyways, at the time, I was playing the point guard during practice, but I was getting a little bit nervous. The coach was yelling. I wasn't able to see the floor properly. I wasn't getting the passes off properly. And the more mistakes I made, the less confident I was getting in myself. I was focusing on my mistakes and not my wins. So practice continued. Coach again still yelling. I was feeling bad about myself. Even though I could play basketball, I wasn't doing well. And all of a sudden, the door behind me opened. We were in a big gymnasium, but you know, when the doors open, you can hear. And I turned around and it was Mr. Rayford. I remember it like it was yesterday. This was literally about 20 years ago, 20 or so years ago. And I remember like it was yesterday. I turned around. Now, Mr. Rayford was not from, I was in Alabama. That's where my university college was. But I'm from Maryland. And Mr. Rayford is also from Maryland. So I was shocked that he was in Alabama. Mr. Rayford opened the door and he walked in. He didn't say, man, it's so powerful, y'all. He didn't say anything. But he looked me in my eye. He just walked in. He didn't know that I was making mistakes over and over again. So he walked in. I looked at him and he kind of smiled like, hey, Tiff, I was in practice. He wasn't going to interfere. He smiled. I looked at him and I smiled, and he sat down and something happened. Now, I didn't recognize it immediately, but my coach recognized it. Remember, throughout the entire practice, my coach was yelling, Tiff, what are you doing? Come on. So I kept making mistakes and I was focusing on my mistakes and I wasn't getting better. But all of a sudden, the dribbling got better. My passes got smoother. My shot got better. I was playing like I knew I could. And I only realized it when my coach stopped us from practice and said, Tiff, I don't know what just happened, but what you're doing right now, yes, keep going, keep doing it. And at that moment, I realized it was because Mr. Rayford had walked into the gym. I associated wins with Mr. Rayford. I associated my ability to achieve. Mr. Rayford always told me, Tiff, there's nothing you can't do. You can play basketball. You're good. So it really, sorry, my nose is running, guys. So at that moment, I realized, wow, your mindset, what you focus on affects you so much. Now, the rest of the practice went really well. Mr. Rayford was there. I felt confident in myself. And I want you to realize I want to be your Mr. Rayford. I believe in you. I have confidence in your abilities. The only reason I create these lessons and anything I create is to help you realize that you can do it. Don't focus on your mistakes. Focus on your wins. Remember that if you really want to speak English fluently, apply what you learn immediately. Remember all the tips that I've taught you today, and I want to be your Mr. Rayford. I love you all. I genuinely want you to speak English fluently, and I'll see you next time.